Thank you very much, everyone. Welcome to our MCCY training this morning. I'm so glad that you joined us by Zoom. I first want to start off by saying a very special thanks to Tennessee CASA Association for hosting our training event today on Zoom. Wendy Spence, who is the Director of Professional Development with Tennessee CASA, and Caitlin Vassar is the Technical Services Coordinator. They both have very graciously donated their time and expertise with us today, and I want to give them a big thank you for doing that. I also appreciate all that Tennessee CASA has done for MCCY over the past few years. They are just great partners, and so I wanted just to take a brief moment this morning to thank them personally. And I'm going to turn over the program now to Wendy Spence, who will do some housekeeping. Thank you, Wendy.
And thank you, Susan, for those kind words. We see TCCY as a wonderful partner as well. And I see a lot of familiar faces on this call today. A lot of people from many child-serving organizations. We welcome you. This event is one of the trainings. Sorry, I'm going to let people in as I talk. This event is one of the trainings brought to you by MCCY, Mid-Cumberland Council on Children and Youth. If you are not currently a member of one of your TCCY regional councils, we invite you to reach out to the coordinators and become a member because these are the types of training that we do throughout the year to help you do the work that you do. And so we're just grateful that you're here. I am the president of the MCCY board this year. And I am delighted that Ellen McCullum, who is the vice president this year, came up with a wonderful idea to have this training, and she will be introducing our presenters. While you are on this training, please make sure that your mics are off so that we don't get any feedback. And please hold your questions until the end. If you think of them as you go and you want to put them in the chat box, we will monitor the chat box, and then the presenters will be able to answer those at the end. Thank you again for joining us. And Ellen, it is your turn.
Thank you. Well, it gives me great pleasure today to introduce two of my most favorite folks who are going to do our training today, Amy Wilcox and Shante Fulton. Amy has served in the early childhood field for over 20 years, working with children, families, teachers as an educator, and also as an early childhood director of a program. Currently, she's one of my folks, which we're so very tickled, serving as an early childhood quality coach for Mid-Cumberland Child Care Resource and Referral, working with all DHS licensed programs in Williamson County. And she provides resources, training, and coaching for our child care providers. Amy is very involved in the Nashville Area Association for the Education of Young Children and is currently serving on the board as a past president. And Amy received her Bachelor's of Art degree from Vanderbilt University. Shante Fulton has been a trainer for over 14 years and has been in the early childhood field for over 24 years. Currently, she is serving as a network infant and toddler quality coach coordinator for the Tennessee CCR&R network. Prior to becoming a network coordinator, she was an infant and toddler quality coach, regional supervisor for the Child Care Central in Huntsville, Alabama, and a resource and referral specialist she was served as an early childhood quality coach. And she has many, many years of working with infants and toddlers and after school children. And so currently, Shante is working on her master's degree in early childhood education. So very, very happy to have these two ladies present our training today. So ladies.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. And so the topic today is we're going to talk about brain development and the impact of a secure attached relationship on brain development. Our objectives are, we are going to identify the parts of the brain and their function. we are going to recognize that brain development is the foundation for all development. And we're also going to talk about the impact of having secure and attached relationships and what impact that has on brain development. So the first thing that we're going to do is, because I like riddles to get us all thinking this morning, we're going to do a riddle. And if you know the answer, please type it in the chat box. So riddle me this: I don't have eyes, ears, nose, and tongue, but I can see, smell, hear, and taste everything. Who am I? Okay, I see some people coming through in the chat box, and the answer is I am a brain. Very good job. If you answered the brain, you are correct. Thank you for doing that activity with me. So the next thing that we're going to do is what I would like for you to do. You're going to need to find your annotate button for this. And if you would, wherever you are at today, we hope, I want you to think about how much you know about brain development. Is it enough to fill a stamp? Is it enough to fill an envelope? Is it enough to fill a dictionary, or is it enough to fill a jump drive? Think about where you are today with brain development and how much you know about it. And if you would use your annotate button and circle which one relates to you. Is it, do you know enough to fill a stamp, an envelope, a dictionary, or a jump drive? Pick the picture that best describes how much you know about brain development. So we have a couple of envelopes, a couple of dictionaries. If you're looking at how to use the annotate button, if you click on view options, scroll down to annotate, and then it'll give you a list of buttons that you can use, like mouse, text, draw, stamp, and you can use the draw one. Okay, so we have several that is with the envelope and several that are with the dictionary. Yeah. Thank you all for participating in that activity. So wherever you are today, we hope that you feel that you can move yourself up to one level to another level when we are completed with the training today. So what is the brain? The brain is the most complex organ in our body, one that we are still learning about each and every day. If you listen to like news and read articles, you'll find out that they're learning so many new things about the brain each and every day. It controls so much, including our thoughts, our memories, our emotions, as well as every process that regulates our body. So we're going to talk about some fun facts about the brain today. And again, we're going to use the chat box for this activity. So I'm going to give you a couple of questions, and if you know the answer, you can just put them in the chat box as we go through each one of them. So the first fun fact is, or question is, what percent of the brain is made up of fat? And you can just put your answer in the chat box. What percent of the brain is made up of fat? I see 80, I see 75, 75, 50, 60-ish. No idea. The correct answer is 60% of the human brain is made up of fat. Not only does that make it the fattiest organ in the human body, but these fatty acids are crucial for the brain's performance. So make sure that you're fueling it appropriately with healthy brain boosting nutrients. So the next question, question number 2, at what age is your brain fully formed? At what age is your brain fully formed? Have lots of 25s, and 25s is 27 on here. The answer is 25. Your brain isn't fully formed until age of 25. Brain development begins from the back of the brain and it works its way to the front. Therefore, your frontal lobes, which controls the planning and reasoning, are the last to strengthen and structure connections. Question number 3. The human brain weighs around how many pounds? Of 8, 6, 2, 8, 7, 10, 6, 5, 8. This one's kind of all over the place. So the answer is 3. The human brain weighs 3 pounds, which is about as much as a half gallon of milk. Question number 4. Is this true or false? You only use 10% of your brain. This one is about split down the middle, half true, half false. The answer is, it is false. It is a myth that you only use 10% of your brain. You actually use all of it, even while you're sleeping. Neurologists confirm that your brain is always active. Question number 5. How fast do you think your brain can travel? This one's kind of amazing to me. How fast do you think your brain can travel? Very fast. And the answer is brain information travels up to an impressive 268 miles per hour. So when a neuron is stimulated, it generates this electrical pulse that travels from cell to cell. So a disruption in this regular processing can cause an epileptic seizure. Okay. Thank you all for going over doing that activity with me. I just wanted to give you a few fun facts about the brain.
All right. So while the basic structures of the brain are present at birth, they're not fully mature or well connected. And when the brain grows and matures in its functionality, it does so from the bottom up and the back to the front. That hindbrain is responsible for that basic function of human life. It controls our breathing, our heart rhythm, and blood sugar levels. It's intact and well developed at birth. The midbrain functions include eye movement, hearing, motor control, your sleep-wake patterns, alertness, and temperature regulation. And that hindbrain and the midbrain together are what we know as the brainstem. The forebrain is responsible for the more complex functions of our body. Most of the forebrain is made up of the cerebrum, whose functions include our thinking, perceiving, planning, and processing language. The most frontal part of the forebrain is the prefrontal cortex,
which is responsible for the higher order functions such as thinking, planning, and problem solving. And that continues to develop and function through our mid-20s. And if you reflect on your own teen years versus your mid to late 20s, how much stronger are these skills as you grew beyond your 20s? So we learned in the quiz that it was age 25 when your brain is fully developed. As you watch this video, think about what we know about brain development. We've talked about the different parts and the ages that they come on board and how it relates to what these children do in the video.
Look at me. You can have fruit snacks, but you can't have them right now, okay?
You gotta wait.
You gotta wait until mommy and daddy come back, okay? You can't eat these yet. You gotta wait until we come back. I'm gonna leave them right here. Don't touch them. Wait, okay? We're gonna come back. Don't eat them yet. Don't eat them. We'll be right back. We just gotta go get something. Just wait a second.
Okay.
Look at me.
What did you notice in that video? What about the brains in there of those two young children? Looks like a toddler and a preschooler. You can share in the chat if you have a thought. And Shantae, I'm not able to pull up the chat right now if you see anything.
They didn't retain the message to wait. After one initiated, the other followed. Impulsive behavior is high.
Those are all correct. Young children's forebrains aren't as developed and still have a lot of growing to do. So therefore, asking two young toddlers to sit in front of delicious gummies and not eat them until a later time is almost impossible for them. When we work with young children, we must always remind ourselves that what we know about young children's brain development and have age-appropriate expectations. Young children cannot be expected to always understand the consequences or plan for the future because their brains haven't fully developed those abilities. At birth, the average baby's brain is about a quarter of the size of the average adult brain. Incredibly, it doubles in size in that first year. It keeps growing to about 80% of its adult size by age 3 and 90% are nearly full grown by age 6. You can see from these numbers what incredible brain growth is happening during those first years of a child's life. Neurons are just another name for brain cells, and the connections between the neurons are called synapses.
So now we're going to watch this short video that explains.
You are amazing. Thank you.
So now we're going to just watch this short video that explains how this rapid growth happens in our brain. It is just a few minutes long, and then once you watch it, we're going to have a little discussion on it.
By the time a human embryo is 5 weeks old, it is just the size of an apple seed, but the brain has already begun to grow. By 8 weeks, the basic structure of the brain and central nervous system are in place. The neural networks are spreading out, and even now the nerve signals are traveling more than 150 miles an hour. At birth, nearly all 100 billion neurons of the human brain are already in place, but the brain only weighs about 25% of what it will later on. It's about to embark on its fastest growing period, quadrupling in size by the time a child finishes preschool. By age 6, the brain is 90% of its adult size. During that burst of growth, 700 new neural connections are formed every second. As we gain the capacity to smile, around 2 months, to talk, usually around a year, and to dress ourselves around the age of 3. In those early years, in fact throughout our lives, the brain changes through experience, learning to speak, taking those first steps, understanding colors and shapes, forming novel thoughts. But as certain neurons are used more frequently, other unused neurons go away. It's a process called pruning. And almost anything can shape us in those baby and toddler years. First words, first ice cream, first TV show, first argument, for better or worse.
Okay, so that video had some amazing information in it. But again, since it was made, there has been more information that has come out about brain development. Just always remember that the brain is so complex and that we're always learning new things about it. And so in the first few years of life, the number of neural connections that form every second is 1 million, much more than the 700 mentioned in the video. And I think it is so amazing after watching that video several times, how they talk about how our brain changes as we get older based on the different experiences that we have. I just think that's so amazing. So what is something that stood out to you about this video? If you would share that in the chat box. What is something that stood out to you in this video? The pruning process, the unused neurons go away, pruning. Reminds me how important young growth is, how quickly the brain grows, yes. The first years are very critical. Thank you for that. So we always have to be mindful of the different experiences that we are giving children, because again, you use it or lose it. So every experience a child has builds those brain connections, and research has shown the best way for these connections to be made is through play. And so according to the researcher, Sergio Pellis, the experience of play changes the connections of neurons in the front end of your brain. And without those play experiences, those neurons aren't changed. It is those changes in the prefrontal cortex, which is your forebrain during childhood, that help wire up the brain's executive control center, which plays a critical role in regulating emotions. It plays a role whenever you're making plans and whenever you're solving problems. And that play is what prepares a young's brain for life. It prepares a young brain for love, even the schoolwork that they're going to have to do when they get older. But to produce this sort of brain development, children need to be able to engage in that so-called free play that we have, that we are offering our children when they are in childcare or even at home. There shouldn't be any coaches, no umpires, no rule books. They should be allowed to make up their own play and then use their brain to process the things that they are doing. Whether it's rough and tumble play or just two kids that are just sitting down deciding to build a sandcastle together, the kids themselves must be able to negotiate how the play will work for them and what rules they are going to follow. The brain then builds those new circuits in that, again, that prefrontal cortex to help it navigate through those complex social interactions. Just knowing how important play is for brain development, we must continue to be those advocates in our field to be sure that those children are receiving lots of play and lots of hands-on experiences, instead of having those worksheets and activities that are focused in on like children's academics. So what powers the shaping and molding of the brain? What do you all think powers the shaping and the molding of the brain? Put it in the chat box if you have any answers. Brain is shaped by experience and interactions, good or bad. Anything else? The environment, interactions with others and the environment, impressions. So what powers the shaping and molding? Thank you all for those answers. So what powers the shaping and molding of the brain? It is that learning and it is that memory. Medical experts now know that when we learn new information and we take on those new experiences that we have and that children have, we can actually shape, mold, and change the makeup of our brains. And that new information and experiences actually help us to like organize and help us reorganize our neural pathways that are in the brain. And those neural pathways are the connections in those brains. And we're going to think of those neural pathways as the brain's wiring. Our brains are rewiring themselves as they take on more information and they learn from their experiences. So in other words, learning can physically change our brains. So why is it so important to understand about neuroplasticity when thinking about the brain's, the baby's brain's function? That is because as a child, every experience and every bit of information is new. And so whenever I am working with educators out in the field, I always tell them those babies have only been here for like a couple of weeks, you know, maybe 365 days, 2 years. They're so young and everything is new to them. And it is up to them to be able to teach those children and give those children moments. So as we mentioned before, a baby's brain develops about 1 million neural connections every second. So the majority of shaping and molding of the brain will happen in the early years of life. Additionally, while a baby may be too young to form those conscious memories, they can form those unconscious memories, which is also known as those implicit memories. These can form as early as just a few months after birth and will be a guiding force in shaping the baby's neural pathways. That neuroplasticity does continue to happen as we get older, but it's not as frequently. So that's because as we get older, our brains want to rely on the existing neural pathways that we have rather than creating new ones. So the pathways that we create when we are children can in many ways be that foundation of our learning and thinking throughout the rest of our lives. So it is important, again, to keep the babies active and keeping those babies learning so that we can continue to develop and to shape their brains.
While children are in their care or with adults, they play together and build connections and pathways in their brain. They go in and out of brain states. And these brain states are shown through the interactions with their environment. And conscious discipline brain state model was developed by Dr. Becky Bailey, and she identifies 3 basic brain, body, mind states, the brain states. And that helps us to identify which internal state a child or adult is experiencing, and then helps us assist them in achieving an optimal state for learning new skills. The 3 brain states we're going to talk about are the survival state, the emotional state, and the executive state. And I think Becky Bailey does an excellent job of kind of explaining the difference, and it helps me personally know when I'm having interactions with both adults and children to know where they are and how to help them get to the next level and get up to that executive state so that they can solve problems. So the survival state is the brainstem. It's our body's alarm and arousal system. It's located within the limbic system, or the primitive part of our brain, and it deals more with instincts rather than learned objective. It's that survival state, and it's activated under threat. It's hardwired, it's fast reacting, it's skills that automatically emerge when the survival state is triggered, and they're accessed in times we feel threatened. We access these skills unconsciously, non-verbally, and automatically in order to initiate a self-defense. When activated, it results in fight or flight. And the developmental question in this state, according to Becky Bailey, is, am I safe? She explains that we must experience enough physical and emotional safety for the body to move out of surviving to being receptive. And the only way to soothe the survival state is through the creation of safety. And the emotional state can be described as our response to being upset. It's the state that's turned on when we become triggered after perceiving the world is not going our way, and it limits our ability to see from another's point of view. And this upset, the unconscious state, keeps us on autopilot, listening to and expressing words and tones that match those of key authority figures from our childhood or past experiences. It often causes children and adults to sink into a state of verbal aggressiveness unknowingly. So if you grew up in a household that had a lot of yelling, maybe, and so you've chosen in your grown-up life that you're not going to do that, and the most times you can, when you get triggered in this middle brain, in the emotional state, you're probably going to yell because that was recorded, she calls it on the CD-ROM in your brain, and it just automatically comes out without you thinking. You think, oh, I sound like my mother, or I sound like my father. The developmental question asked by someone in an emotional state is, am I loved? We need to know that we're loved by families, societies, and humankind for healthy brain development. And the only way to soothe an upset emotional state is through the creation of connection. The executive state is the optimal state for problem solving and learning. It's where we all want children to be, where we all want adults to be. We want to operate out of our executive state. And this can be described as being in our zone or relaxed alertness. It's where we can access our own knowledge in order to make wise choices. In this state, we're not controlled by past conditioning. We're able to empathize and relate to others. We're able to focus and achieve our goals and be conscious in our thoughts. Unlike the emotional and survival states, the executive state allows us to consciously respond instead of automatically reacting to experiences around us. The developmental question for this state is, what can I learn? And more importantly, what can I learn from this encounter? What can I learn from this lesson or this problem? And when children are in this state, they let go of their primitive instincts, their impulsivity and defensive strategies, and can practice skills to regulate their emotions and behavior. So when you think about maybe an early childhood classroom, young threes maybe, and they are, two children are having an argument and they're really, really frustrated or mad, and you hear an educator say you're sorry, say you're sorry. Well, just think about your own time. If you're angry, that's not a time when you can say you're sorry, because your brain is not in a state. It's in either fight or flight, or you don't love me, you're hurting me. And we have to be above that. So we have to cool and calm down. Becky Bailey does a lot of breathing techniques to help children get out of their lower brains into their optimal states so that they can help them problem solve.
Okay, it's riddle me time one more time. Riddle me this. I have all the knowledge that you have. I am small as your fist and your hands can hold me. Who am I? I have all the knowledge that you have. I am as small as your fist and your hands can hold me. Who am I? If you answered the brain, you are correct. Okay, so now we're going to go a little bit more in depth with specific ways to build brains as adults. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the 5 R's of brain development. They are relationships, responsive caregiving, respect, routines, and repetition. We all know that those first 1,000 days of life are particularly important because it provides the foundation for that future development. And so during these first 3 years, children can learn that emotional and the social skills that they need to propel them into their executive state when needed. However, this comes through the relationships and scaffolding of adults like you all. 0 to 3 has identified 5 key concepts that go into growing the brain and that relationships between the adult and the child. Some were even mentioned on the previous slide. And again, these are relationships, responsive caregiving, respect, routines, and repetition.
So the first one, relationships between a child and a caretaker create the foundation for the baby's emotional development and their mental health. Research on healthy attachments tells us that a strong and healthy, loving bond with at least one adult is needed for healthy brain development. When children feel safe and secure in their attachment with an adult, they learn to trust their environment and know that they are protected. Securely attached children can build self-confidence and their self-esteem at a very young age. And some of the strategies adults can use with children include trying to understand the meaning of behavior of a child, just showing delight in that child and what they're doing. Have fun together. Using words and actions to show understanding of the child's feelings. And for caregivers or adults who work or have infants and toddlers, that personal touch, that eye contact, back and forth verbal exchanges can also help bonding to enhance the relationship piece. And responsive interactions occur when that adult tunes into the child's cues using their facial expressions, the gestures, sounds, and words. By tuning in, they learn to understand how a child is feeling and what he or she is thinking, and then responds in ways that are supportive and sensitive to what the child is telling you he or she needs. Caregivers can use the following strategies with children. So when a baby cries or a toddler gets upset, we try to discover what might help. Is it feeding, soothing, holding, singing, or just searching for what helps when they get upset? You want to show your interest and delight in what that child is doing. Just enjoy the moment. Meet the child's need for feeding, rest, sleeping, diapering, and play. That's all responsive caregiving. And when adults see the world through the eyes of a child and respect their unique perspective, they're contributing to that brain development. Feelings generated by being respected and disrespected are connected to that primitive part of the brain in the limbic center, where your instincts drive your behaviors. When a child feels disrespected, they perceive that behavior toward you as a threat, and they go into their survival brain. As discussed before, this is the instinctual part of the brain that controls the most basic autonomic bodily functions. On the other hand, when a child feels respected, they feel the primitive emotions connected to this as well, including love, support, and nourishment. Strategies that adults can use with children include just making eye contact with the child, sit or squat down at their level while playing and speaking with them. Follow their preferences. They'll let you know which foods they prefer. They'll let you know when they are full and which toys they like to play with. An adult can create a supportive, predictable environment to help the children know what to expect. Daily routines allow for an automatic response or decision-making in advance that permits the brain to use its mental resources for other tasks. When children are not on a predictable schedule, their brains focus on what might happen instead of what will happen. Through routines, infants and toddlers learn self-control. Consistent routines provide comfort and a sense of safety, security, and emotional stability to young children because they know what will happen next. When children feel this sense of safety and trust, they're free to explore and play, thus developing their brain. Strategies that adults can use with children include establishing routines for their waking, diapering, and toileting, feeding, bathing, playtime, nap time, and bedtime, while providing routine care, laugh, play, talk, and sing. Pleasurable interactions during routines help build other R's, such as relationships, respect, and responsive interactions. As children's brains develop, they use and reuse connections between ideas in order to build a strong foundation that is then reinforced through lifelong learning. These connections are created through repetition. As we talked about earlier, a baby's born ready to learn. Their brain cells reach out and make neural connections with their experiences. And these connections are called synapses. And as the synapses are stimulated or repeated over and over, they become hardwired. The connections that are regularly used will be kept, and those not will be pruned. Research has shown that repetition can be critically important for learning in general. Repeating words, a concept, routine, or skills allows a child to form an understanding around what was introduced to them. They'll pick up on ideas that are repeated and explained to them. So it's not surprising that children learn better from reading a book over and over again rather than just reading it once or twice. Strategies adults can use with children include repeating the same words, songs, and stories to help the babies learn, provide repeated opportunities to practice the same skills, and depending on the child's developmental abilities, encourage repeated attempts to do things like smile, reach, make sounds, talk, roll over, stand, walk, pick up small objects, and play with toys.
I can get myself off the mute. So now we're going to talk a little bit about serve and return, which is that secret to building that strong brain architecture. So as we discussed, or as Amy discussed just a few minutes ago, within the 5 R's, the healthy relationships are the most important for building those strong brains. Relationships begin at birth when infants have those strong responsive caregivers and strong responsive caregiving techniques, which would be those serve and return interactions. Serve and return can be compared to a game of tennis between a child and a caregiver. The child serves by reaching out for an interaction, whether it be through eye contact, it could be just a facial expression, gestures, maybe even babbling, or just even touching. And the responsive adult or the responsive caregiver will then in turn return the serve. The adult can return by just speaking back, playing with the child, laughing, or just making gestures. And so just having those like back and forth exchanges are the start of those early brain development connections. And so when children serve and the adult returns, those neural connections are then formed within all different areas of the brain, which are the building blocks of the motor skills, the memory, the language, the social emotional connections, behavior control, and even that visual development. The serve and return connections are literally building the children's brains. And through these exchanges, children learn to trust. They learn to interact with others, whether it be children or whether it be adults. And they're also able to learn how to communicate their needs. And lots of times when I'm working with educators out in the field and we're talking about children and being able to communicate their needs, it starts with that adult that they are with a majority of the time, whether it be a caregiver, whether it be a parent. We are working on those children as they get older to be able to communicate what their needs are. It just helps with that social emotional development. And so they help children learn how to control their emotions. Those brain development connections help them learn how to cope with stress, and it also helps them learn other skills for that later development in life. So as we have learned, caregivers who are consistently engaging in those serve and return interactions from infancy build the foundation of brain for all of learning, all of behavior, and all of the health related needs that follow later in life. So there are 5 steps for these serve and return interactions that can help you all as adults and educators and caregivers be able to learn the process of serve and return and help build those brains. So now we're going to watch a short video about the 5 steps for brain building serve and return and what that actually looks like when you are doing it.
Did you know that you can help build a child's brain?
Those are bananas.
Everyday interactions can have a big impact on developing brains throughout childhood, starting even before babies can talk.
Scientists call this serve and return. Like a game of tennis or ping pong, a child serves by showing an interest in something, and the adult responds in a supportive way.
Finding moments throughout the day to do it is easy and fun, and you'll be building strong brains. You can use 5 steps to practice serve and return with any child. Step 1, share the focus.
When a child is interested or curious, you can see it.
What's this? It's a stroller.
Watch this child look at something in a book. Right there. Pointing shows interest.
Cow.
So does making a sound, like this child. And mom is paying close attention.
See baby moving those little arms and legs and focusing on the ball? That's a serve.
The key is paying attention to what the child is noticing.
Oh, you like those guys too?
Look at Grandpa sharing the focus.
By noticing serves, you will help build curiosity, and you'll strengthen your relationship.
Step 2, support and encourage.
You can return a child's serve by saying a word of encouragement.
That's right. Very good.
Watch Grandpa return this serve by saying thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Even a facial expression can encourage a child.
Orange.
Or emotion, like this mom dancing.
Time.
You can also pick up the object that the child is pointing to and bring it closer.
We need help to sit her down.
Things like helping and playing with the child let them know that their thoughts and feelings are heard and understood. Step 3, name it.
Yeah, the puppy. See the windows, the house.
When you return a child's serve by naming what they are seeing, doing, or feeling, you make important language connections in their brain.
He's got bumps all over him, huh?
This brain building happens even before a child can talk or understand your words.
You can name anything, a person, a thing, an action, a feeling, or a combination.
Clean up, everybody do your shit.
When you name what a child is focused on, you help build understanding of the world around us and what to expect from it.
The baby's sitting. Ooh, the baby's sitting in the back seat of the car.
You like those? Those are raisins. You have raisins all the time.
Naming also gives a child words to use later and shows that words are important to you.
Step 4, take turns back and forth.
Taking turns helps children learn self-control and how to get along with others.
Waiting is crucial. When you return a serve, give the child a chance to respond.
How are you? I'm good. How are you?
Note that the caregiver waits here for the next serve.
See this toddler navigating a new adventure? Grandpa is waiting patiently, returning serves by asking questions and then waiting to see what happens next.
You want to cover it?
Yeah.
Are you cold?
Yeah.
Oh, put this over your lap like this, okay? There. Do you like that?
Yeah.
Oh.
By waiting, You give the child time to develop ideas and build confidence and independence.
Step 5, practice endings and beginnings. Children signal when they're done or ready to move on to a new activity.
Watch how this child shows it's time to start something new. Letting go of a toy signals an ending. Then picking up a new toy signals the next beginning.
Wanna play with the giraffe?
Sharing the focus is important in this step.
Ooh, the big eagle.
Because this mom is sharing the focus, she notices when her child is ready to end one activity and begin something new.
When you can find these moments for a child to take the lead,
I'm gonna try this one.
you support the child in exploring their world
Would you like to play with something else?
and make more serve and return interactions possible.
Sit there.
Serve and return interaction is critical for a child's developing brain. And the best news is that you can do it anytime, anywhere, without any need for toys or technology.
Look for small opportunities throughout the day, like while you're making a snack or while you're grocery shopping. What matters most is that you're doing each of these 5 steps. Notice the serve and share the child's focus of attention. Return the serve by supporting and encouraging. Name it, take turns going back and forth, and practice endings and beginnings.
Serve and return interactions make everyday moments fun and become second nature with practice. Try practicing with a child today.
Okay, so as they talked about in the, as mentioned in the video, as we implement these 5 steps consistently, our children's brains are being built. So, and also as they were saying that you can do these things anytime, you can do these things anywhere. I know lots of times when you're having conversations with infants and toddlers who who you think may not be able to communicate back to you, you think that they're not, some people think that they're not really learning anything. But you always want to be sure that you are practicing those 5 steps for brain building, those 5 steps of serve and return, because even though they may not communicate using words with you, they are communicating with you and they are picking up on things and their brains are building. So just again, you can do those things anytime, anywhere. You want to be sure that you're sharing the focus, you're supporting and encouraging, you're naming things, you're taking turns back and forth. And then you're also practicing endings and beginnings. So now what we're going to do is put the serve and return into practice. So we're going to do a short little activity where I am going to throw you a serve and ask you to return it with something that you do or say to a child. And you can put your answers in the chat box as we go through each one of them. So the first one that we're going to do is a baby from 0 to 6 months, and their serve is they're gazing at you and they are making eye contact with you. What can you do as an adult to return that serve? You can smile or talk, blinking, make eye contact and smile, or you can talk to them. Very good. Okay, and then make eye contact with them and talk to them. Keep eye contact, smile, and talking. Very good. Thank you. The next one is babies that are 6 to 12 months old, and their serve is they are reaching for things. How can you return the serve as an adult? You can hand it to them. You can help them get it. You can bring them item closer. Look at the item and comment on it. Talk to them about the item. Name the item. Give them what they're reaching for. help them reach for the item while labeling the item. Very good answers. I also think it's very important. I love how you all said to talk to them about the item, name the item, label the item. You're always wanting to be using language when you're working with infants and toddlers and children, because that is how they pick up on words, and that is how they learn how to use their words. I always tell people that whenever you work with infants or toddlers or preschoolers, just children in general, it's almost like you're a sports commentator, and you're talking about every single thing that you are doing. And that is how they pick up on that language. Their brains are building. If you don't give them the words to use, then they're not going to learn any words. So you want to be sure that anytime you have those serve and return interactions with it, you're always naming things. You're always talking to them. You're always using those communication skills. Ask them if they want to play with it. If it is safe, unless not safe, play with them with the item. Very good. Okay, so the next one is toddlers that are 12 to 18 months. And your serve is you bring them a book for you to read. They bring you a book for you to read. What can you do to return that serve? You can read to the book to them and point out the pictures. Very good. Take the book, sit down with them and read to them. Very good. You could ask them, you could say something like, you want to read the book? The book is titled The Very Hungry Caterpillar, and it is about a caterpillar who is born and is very hungry, and she goes on a search for some food. Let's look through the book to see what kind of food we can find and see what happens next. Explain the pictures, comment on the book, and sit and read it with enthusiasm. The more enthusiasm that you use, the more engaged that they'll be. And you can invite other children to sit down and read it as well. And another good thing that you all are talking about in the chat books is just talk about the illustrations. You may not necessarily want to read the book to them, but you can talk about the illustrations and the pictures in the book as well. Thank you for that. And then the toddler that is 18 to 24 months old, they ask you yes or no questions. What do you do to return that serve? They ask you yes or no questions. Respond yes or no, provide follow-up and questions or comment, answer and maybe explain a little of your yes or no answers in a way that they can understand your answers. Provide more information, provide briefly what your answer is, answer and explain. Very good, and ask open-ended questions. Answer and initiate more conversation about their question. Very good. And then the last one is a toddler that is 24 to 36 months of age, and they talk in simple 2 to 3 word sentences. What can you do to return the serve? Listen attentively. Listen and respond. Listen and talk back. Use complete sentences back to them. You can extend the sentence and continue to the dialogue. Like, for example, you may have a child that says something like, I like dogs. And then you as the adult can say, well, I like dogs too. I like big dogs that I can play with outside. And then you can ask the child what kind of dogs that they like and let them explain whether it be big dogs or small dogs. So very good. Thank you for doing that activity with me.
So now this brain break lets you use your synapses and neurons to come up with the puzzle, what word this is spelling. So when you figure it out, if you'll type the word in the chat box. So the first one is find a letter that's in sock, but not in clock. And I'll let you read the slides for the rest so that you can do it at your own pace. And then type the word in the chat box when you figure it out.
We have the first one. Let me go through each one of them, Amy.
Okay. I mean, have we got the right answer coming in?
We have S's, and then we have a couple of people with the correct answer, yes.
Okay. All right.
We have smile. Oh.
All right, there you go, smile. When you are working with children and if tensions between children is elevated, if you smile and take a breath, that's a Becky Bailey technique that helps calm and bring children to a different brain state. And the next thing we're going to do is, what are 2 things that you've learned about brain development today? What 2 things kind of spoke out to you? Or for those of you that had the higher level dictionary knowledge, you already had a lot of knowledge of brain development. What things amaze you about brain development? And you can write or draw it on the whiteboard. Or if you're not able to access that, you can type it in the chat box. 2 things you've learned about brain development, or 2 things that you experts are amazed about brain development.
Let's go into this. The speed at which the brain processes information. Loved learning about Becky Bailey's brain model and brain states. How fast the brain goes and the weight. Reminds me that the knowledge we have about the brain constantly changes. The speed of the brain. Brains can be rewired. Brains can be rewired, and learning can physically change the brain. Free play is critical to prefrontal cortex connection building. Yes, ma'am. How the brain is actually developed as we grow. Amazed by all the facts on the actual brain. How early in life the brain is developed. Babies' brains are awesome.
They are amazing, and what a responsibility we all as adults have for developing these brains. And think of just over your lifetime or my lifetime of when I was growing up, that you didn't need preschool or early care because you're going to learn when you get to school, right? So we waited 5 or 6 years before we start developing and expanding those brains. It's amazing how much the brain grows in the first 6 years. All right, so this next video, let's see, let me clear that off. Thank you for participating in that. We've learned that a child's brain will develop more from birth to 5 than any other time in their life. And because of this, a child's early experiences in their first few years of life, both positive or negative, will be the key impact in forming how well their brain develops. It's important to know and understand what early brain development will have, that it will have a lasting impact on the child's ability to learn and to succeed in school and life. And in this video on brain development in the early years, it shows the importance of the brain building connections. And we're gonna, I'm gonna stop this. We're not gonna watch this whole video, just a few minutes of it. And this was put together by the state of Arizona. Let's see.
What are my hopes for her future? I think what's most important to me is that she's healthy and happy.
I want them to be responsible and respectful and successful.
Curious about the world, someone who loves learning.
To give back to her community.
I want my child to have the opportunity to follow his dream, whatever that is.
I am really very open about what they want to be in the future. I want them to be whatever they want to be.
Every child deserves the chance to reach their full potential. And as science continues to advance our understanding of child development and of the human brain, we know that the seeds of a healthy, successful life are planted in the early years. From day one, babies are born learning. Their brains are growing and developing at an amazing rate. In the first 5 years, faster than any other time in life. And how a child's brain develops in these early years will have a huge and lasting impact on their future. At birth, a baby brain is only a quarter of the size of an adult brain, but will double in size during the first year. By age 3, it will grow to almost 80% of adult size, and 90% by the time a child starts kindergarten. And while the brain is growing in size, it's also forming billions of connections. These connections between brain cells are what really make the brain work. And as the child grows and develops, the brain cells connect with each other in more complex ways. Different areas are responsible for different abilities, but they're all interconnected. They all contribute to the child's overall health and well-being. These early brain connections set the stage for higher level skills to develop later on, like motivation, focus, problem solving, and getting along with others. Things that really make a difference in a person's ability to learn and do well in school and in life. The first few years of life are the best opportunity to develop this network of brain connections. It's much harder later on. Connections that are used more often become stronger, while those that are not used are eventually eliminated, making the brain more efficient. Building brain connections is like building muscles. Use it or lose it. But these vital connections are not made automatically. They don't just happen. So how does healthy brain development happen? Through positive, stable, nurturing relationships with parents and caring adults. Study after study shows that caring interaction, stimulation, and love during their first few days, weeks, months, and years help a child feel safe and secure and help their brain develop a strong, healthy network of connections. Unfortunately, the opposite is also true. Neuroscience shows the dramatic impact of persistent negative experiences and toxic stress. Fewer brain connections develop, and at a slower rate. They also reinforce negative brain connections. Too many of Arizona's youngest kids face the kind of challenges that make it difficult for healthy brain development, like hunger and neglect. The evidence is clear. Positive, nurturing experiences in their early years help children feel safe and secure and go on to be healthier and more successful in school and in life. They tend to have better language, math, and social skills. They're more likely to graduate. They're more prepared for college and career.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. So our brain literally grows by using it. So how can we as adults ensure that we give our children the best opportunities for positive and healthy brain development? We can do this by ensuring that we provide the most effective, appropriate, and enriched opportunities for the children. When we give our children a stimulated and enriched environment, they become children who grow into adults that are capable, confident, and independent. And we're going to look now at the core parts of brain development and specific activities that can be done to support the child's brain development before we close. And all children love to learn. And it's true that the younger the child is, the easier it is for them to learn. What makes our job as adults so special is that children will learn from us when they are taught in sincere and in a joyous manner. That's why the adult and child together can be the most dynamic teaching and learning team when provided with the right tools. Together, we'll explore the 4 core parts of brain development: the language, movement, thinking skills, and the social emotional development, and activities you can do to support these developing skills.
So what can you do to support brain development? The first thing that we're going to talk about is language. Babies can and will learn language just by hearing others speak. And so these conversations or interactions that they are hearing shape those developing, shape the developing language area of the brain. And so before 6 months of age, babies can recognize like familiar words, but they may not understand most of them. So they recognize them, they just may not understand what they are and what they mean. So there's really no need to actually teach babies to talk. Just having those serve and return interactions that we talked about before, talking with them and interacting with them all throughout the day is all you really need to be making those connections between sounds and words. It is important that when you're interacting or talking with babies, that you follow their lead. So you give them plenty of time to respond. Even if it's just babbling sounds, you want to give them time to be able to respond to your return. Also, you can use a variety of different ways to be able to communicate with babies and children. You don't just have to use words when interacting with babies, but you can also use gestures, or you can even use facial expressions. The one key thing here to always remember is just being patient. Children are learning and children are developing, and that is one of the reasons why we call it that early childhood development and that brain development. And they're just trying to understand while they're practicing new words and new phrases. So you want to be sure that you're patient with them and you're allowing them to be able to respond to your serve. The next one is movement. When we're thinking about movement with like infants, the part of the brain that controls that large movement will increase significantly around that 6 to 12 months of life. And during that time, a baby can start to do things like sit up alone. They may start crawling around 8 to 10 months. They may begin to stand and start cruising around 10 to 11 months, and maybe at 12 months old, they may start to walking. It is important to know that to remember the developmental milestones specifically around movement, and that they will be different for each child. You may have a child or an infant that may not start crawling and they'll just immediately start walking. And you may have an infant that may not start walking until around 15 months old. And you may have one that may start walking around 9 months old. Just know that they will do it on their own time. And it will be different for each child. So some of the ways that you can provide play or movement experiences for infants is just by placing toys on the floor when you're on the floor with them and having them to reach out for them, and then even moving the toy back some. You can sit and support the babies on the floor upright and move a ball or toy in front of her. This also, doing things like that, will allow and will encourage the baby to follow the toy with their eyes and then start reaching and grasping for it. Encouraging the babies just to pull up to stand, maybe having some furniture near to be able to encourage them to pull him or herself up. Be sure that the furniture and things like that is sturdy, that they're pulling up over. Toddlers' development will look a little bit different than infants. A toddler's brain's pathways will start to transmit those messages quicker and clearer. So as a result, toddlers will have more control and coordination over their movement. A toddler's fine motor and gross motor skills have strengthened significantly at this age group. So they're able to do a lot more complex skills, such as using a spoon or maybe a fork, holding cups, jumping, skipping, climbing. And as they go into the preschool age, of course, they start to do more and more things, being more precise and mastering those skills a little bit more than they were when they were toddler age. Just provide activities and play opportunities for the children to be able to support that movement, that gross motor and that fine motor development. fine motor activities that they could do, or like finger play, finger painting, playing with Play-Doh, just drawing, giving them crayons and markers and pencils to even be able to use those fine motors. Puzzles, building blocks, Legos are good materials to have on hand when working with infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. And also just providing plenty of time for play for children, again, to be able to use those large motor muscles and to be able to have those interactions with children. And then the next one is thinking skills. As we talked about a little bit earlier with the 5 R's, babies do learn by repeating actions over and over and over again. I think even as adults, we begin to learn things by doing them over and over again. It's like that practice makes perfect. And so these repeated actions with objects and people, they do help infants learn about their physical and social environments. For example, you may have a baby that repeatedly drops your spoon, and then you as an adult will repeatedly pick it up, or whether it be a spoon or a sippy cup. They're learning about gravity. They're also learning that they can rely on you to be there for them. So it's securing that attachment, and it's also securing that relationship and that bonding between the two of you. And one way to provide interesting things for babies to touch and explore is to offer them containers that they can fill and dump. Fill and dumping is a great activity for children. The process of doing that dumping over and over again is a way that they learn about objects and how they work. Absolutely expect there to be messes when letting babies explore, especially when it comes to things like meal times. Many babies love to touch their food and explore different textures with their fingers because they are very sensory oriented. And thinking about like toddlers, you really don't need those fancy like worksheets and flashcards. Toddlers learn best by exploring in their environment, and their environment must be safe, and it must be stimulating, and it must be set up by loving parents, caregivers, and peers. And all they really need is an environment full of singing, talking, movement, playing, and listening to other children is actually helping them learn. Again, toddlers learn through play, as all children do. So be sure that, again, as I've talked about several other times, is being sure that you're allowing time for children to have those opportunities for play. Play allows children to learn to solve problems. Play allows them to make choices. Play allows them to develop different skills and learn new concepts. And then the last one that we're going to talk about is the social emotional development. Again, the 5 R's of brain development and how relationships between a child and adult creates the foundation for a baby's social emotional development. We did discuss that earlier. A positive social interaction between a baby and adult is critical for that baby's development and growing brain. And so as an adult, you do have the ability to be able to stimulate the brain and build that healthy brain development just by touching and holding and feeding and talking to and just looking at the babies. It is very important when you're forming a relationship with infants that you establish that feelings of trust and security. And I always tell people too, just kind of put yourself as an adult. If you don't feel safe and secure in your environment, you're most likely not going to learn anything. You're not going to pick up on anything because you don't feel safe. And it goes back to those Becky Bailey's brain states of not feeling safe and secure. You're in that brain state of survival mode, fight or flight. And so you can't really think about anything else but survival mode. You can do this by reading your baby's cues and responding to their individual needs. I can't express enough about being sure that you're responding to children's needs. It again helps with that safety and security. I know that lots of times I hear adults say, well, if I go to them every single time they cry, every time they need something, I'm spoiling them. You are not. You're building that safe and that secure foundation for them to help them grow and to help them learn and to help them build those brain connections. So when you are supportive and sensitive in your responses, you are securing your bond and your attachment. And without that secure attachment, again, a baby's brain will not develop appropriately.
Okay, we are going to skip this activity and go back. We have given you a lot of information in our 90 minutes together. And so now we are hoping that maybe you have changed. And how much do you know about brain development now? Do you have enough to fill a stamp, an envelope, a dictionary, or a thumb drive, jump drive? You can use that annotate button and give a circle on where you are. And we're not going to know whether you moved up or not, but we are hoping that you got something out of today. Look at all those dictionaries. I find anything to do with the brain so fascinating, and love learning about how little children learn, and that we are still learning. The brain is just so fascinating. All right, so we've got mostly dictionaries. All right. We like to see that. I'm going to clear it off. And now we've got some time if anybody had any questions, or if you typed it in the chat box. I don't know if Caitlin maybe caught those, if we had any. And while you're typing in questions, if you have any, I'll pop up some references that were used when this was created. Did we have any questions?
This is Wendy. I don't see any right now. I think you've had so many responses, so I'm trying to look through them, but feel free to add those to the chat box. Hey, it looks like you have one. What are some recommendations? Okay, it just moved on me. Let me open this box up. What are some recommendations for helping parents learn and implement skills for brain building who may have missed key opportunities to healthy building and molding their babies' brains?
Shantae, do you want to take a first stab at that?
I can. I would just say is to just always refer back to just having those serve and return interactions. Start there.
It's never too late. I mean,
never too late. No.
To get those parents to understand. I think, early childhood educators and parents, I mean, that's what Shantae and I do, is help educators understand this brain development, because it helps them to know what to do in the classroom, how not have those expectations of, for example, worksheets for 2.5-year-olds, what's appropriate and developmentally appropriate for children. The same as parents as well, that just whatever, if you work with them, now you have knowledge, if you didn't have the knowledge that you had before, we got to spread it. It's like putting a pebble in the water, and the how it spreads out to help everyone understand about brain development and how important these early years are.
And I think that is, you've pretty much answered. Another question was how to help a child who has a slow start.
Shantae, you can answer too, but I would just say what we want to meet a child wherever they are. So if they do not have those positive experiences in their early years, maybe they don't have lots of words that they hear in their early years, wherever they come to you or a preschool or a child care or a family child care home, we want adults to know to meet them where they are, and to do all those 5 R's from whatever age that starts. You're right, it's a pretty similar answer to the parent one. Shantae, do you have anything to add?
No, ma'am, I agree.
And then there's another question. What age did you say implicit memory can be stored?
It's around like 9 months of age. That's 6 to 9 months age.
And Kim has asked, will we be able to share this recording with parents in our circle? This recording will be available and it will be sent to you. And it will also be available on the TCCY website. So I will ask our presenters, I believe we have permission to share this. Is that correct?
I would
Shante, this
so, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And then we just have positive comments. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for all the information. It was so helpful. Oh, I think they said so mind-blowing. Thank you for sharing this knowledge.
Well, Wendy, this is
a good pun there.
This is Susan. I will say that we will have certificates out to everyone within the next couple of weeks. Thank our Amy and Shante today for this informative training and how important it is to have that supportive adults in a child's life early in their life. Thank you for emphasizing that again to us. We appreciate that. Great information that you shared. If you did not sign in on Eventbrite or register on Eventbrite, I need you to put your email in the chat box before you leave so that I will know where to send your certificate to. If you put that email in there, if your name's not a part of your email, make sure that you email it. You also include your name with your email. Again, thank everyone for coming. We appreciate it, and thank our presenters. It was great, ladies, to have you today, and we appreciate you.
Susan, I'll just add one thing too, is that if you, when we're talking about helping the parents, you can send them to the CDC Developmental Milestones website, and it gets different activities on there that they can do with the children. You can also send them to the Tennessee Early Learning Guidelines that we use here in the state of Tennessee. It also has different activities based on age that the parents and educators can use with children. And it starts from birth and it goes up to, with the 10Ls, it goes up to school agers. Is that correct, Amy? And then it has two different sets, one that's from birth to 5, and then the other one is a set for school agers. And then, of course, you have the CDC developmental milestones. And it gives great examples on both of them of things that they can do.
Someone asked the question, ladies, could you add a resource page when we send out the recording? Do you all have a resource page that we can send with this to the attendees?
Yes, I can.
Yes, we've got one we can modify and add what Shante talked about and send out. Send to you, Susan, right? And you'll send
That'll be fine. Yes, thank you, Amy. I hope you ladies can see the thank yous coming in. I will let you know that when you do sign out of the training today, you should receive a survey as you're signing out, so you can take a few moments. It won't take you long to complete that survey. We would appreciate it. Amy and Shante, I'm hoping you're seeing all the thank yous, and we appreciate it, and all those great things in the chat box.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. And we will now stop the recording, I believe.